to Shattering Myths. We have Kirk with us. Kirk, I have a question for you. Is there much of a difference between the internal conflicts faced by the United States in arming both sides in a conflict and not having a clue that the sides are in conflict with one another and with them, the United States, and the way that Christians have to deal with the conflicts between their New Testament and what they would refer to as the Old Testament?
You just stick your head in the sand. Don't worry about it. They really do.
Yeah, it's kind of like that report that I read about. The 50 analysts for the Defense Department have signed a petition saying that their reports on the assessment of the strength of the Islamic State and al-Nusra are being deliberately altered to create a false impression.
When you were talking this morning, I flashed back on the old film 1984.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always a television somewhere, and it's always doing the same thing. The war is going well. The enemy is on the run.
Right.
You know, and I said, boy, have we become 1984.
Yeah, I mean, look at the tapes that we produced for the war in the Pacific in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
The enemy is on the run, and we are doing well. And think of the carnage, the sacrifice of life that was foisted under that propaganda. And we were sacrificing men by the tens of thousands, ultimately by the hundreds of thousands, to take godforsaken strips of volcanic dirt in the middle of the Pacific Ocean for no purpose whatsoever. In fact, it was kind of the Vietnam doctrine that, so I want you to go charge up. Yeah, you go charge up that hill, Hamburger Hill, and as soon as you get there, leave it. It serves no purpose, but that's the kind of stuff that plays really well in the newsreels back home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just keep on telling people your military is protecting you. They're fighting out there so that you can be free. Oh my God.
Sure, pal.
Yeah, sure, pal.
I wanted to ask you a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
I was, because I couldn't figure out when you wrote, when you translated the prophecy about all the Muslims returning back to fight Israel, 150 million of them. And there was a part in there where I think you implied or translated that they would be coming in on ships. And you extrapolated those ships would have to be, because Muslims don't build anything, so they're not their ships. They would have to come in on European ships and the United States ships, possibly military ships. And I had trouble with that. I couldn't quite figure out why would they so blatantly do that. And then when all this has happened the last few days of so much news about millions of people coming to Europe and millions also coming to the United States, they're going to create so much of a problem where they land, that when all they have to say at some point is, I want to go back to my homeland, and they'll give them every ship, they'll float them all back. So I was thinking, would they so blatantly send the jihadists there to kill Israel, to destroy Israel? They won't have to. They can do it in the sky, and the guise of, I'm sending you back because they want to go back to the homeland, and there's so much trouble. What the hey? This is a good plan.
Exactly.
But in essence, all we're doing is taking an armada, delivering an armada right at the doorsteps of Israel.
Correct.
So I just found it how these prophecies just keep coming out.
Correct. And of course, with half of Syria's population and being refugee, and probably you've got a similar population in Iraq, with about half of that population essentially being displaced. And most of them, 80% of them now are Sunnis. Now, if they're fleeing the Islamic State, they're Shias, but it's 80% of Muslim, maybe 85% are Sunnis. Can you imagine being in a situation where if you don't join the jihadists will kill you. They'll take your sister or your daughter and rape them. And if you join them, then they're going to celebrate you, and you're considered one of them. What are they going to go do? I mean, they're only going to play in Iraq and Syria long enough to consolidate their positions and power. Once they have done that, and they're close to having done that, where are they going to go?
Well,
it's so easy to predict.
Khomeini already said it yesterday. He said, "You got 25 years, Israel."
Yeah.
And he ain't thinking about 25 years either.
Yeah. I don't know. Did you say 25 or 15? I've forgotten.
I thought it was 25. But
Yeah.
You know, I'm listening to a news report, and God knows.
Yeah. God knows.
They are.
Yeah, but I actually quoted that statement from him, and I don't know if he said 15 or 25, but the reality here is that they're going to go into Jordan next.
Mm-hmm.
And they're also going to go into Saudi Arabia. And in Saudi Arabia, they're going to get enormous numbers of arms. Their weaponry will be just stellar. Right, and then they'll attack to weaken the Shia areas of Lebanon. And once they're in position like that, then what's going to happen? Israel. What's interesting, of course, is that here's the Ayatollah claiming that Israel's not going to exist in 15 to 25 years. But it's not Shia Islam that's going to be perpetrating this fight. Shia Islam will have been devoured.
Yeah.
It's Sunni Islam.
Yeah.
Looking up the quote, he said Israel won't survive the next 25 years.
Yeah, Kirk was right. I couldn't remember if it was 15 or 25. What's interesting, of course, is that this is 2015. The Magog War starts in 2027. So it's 12 years. So in 12 years, Team Islam is going to begin their final push for the eradication of Israel, and they're going to come really close to pulling it off this time. Really close. So it's really just 17 years and the battle begins. And this battle, within 20 years, that phase of the battle will be over. Now, what's also interesting is that, and I really never had thought this through before. It just never dawned on me. But you know how the Magog War, it lists the countries that participate, and it's got Iraq, and it's got Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, and Syria, and Jordan. And those territories are all uniformly, and on the other side, Egypt and Libya, are all in this first phase of the Magog War. But it does not include the far side of the Tigris-Euphrates River, which would be Shia Islam in Iran, in the Magog Federation. And it talks about then, in Revelation, 200 million man army coming across the river, the Tigris-Euphrates River, to attack Israel in the Battle of Armageddon.
Yeah, the Chinese.
Right.
Wherever they are.
But had you ever stopped? I mean, I hadn't. The first time I thought about this is that, well, the Magog War is led by Gog, from Turkey, and that's Sunni. And so the Magog War is going to be a Sunni onslaught against Israel.
All right.
But Armageddon, if they're coming across the Euphrates, it's the Chinese and the Russians who have an ally in Iran. Iran will be sidelined in that first assault, the Magog War. But then they're left to fight along with the Chinese and the Russians. That's their ally.
Will there be much Russia left?
Well, we know that because of the positioning, the juxtaposition of China and Russia with Shia Islam and therefore Iran and Syria, and with the United States and Europe align with Sunni Islam, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, et al., Egypt, you're going these two wars actually just flow one into the other. And so you've got I think that is a possibility that Russia and the United States and Europe could all take themselves out because they're on opposite sides. And you're seeing it right now with the Russians going into Syria.
Yeah, they just built another big base.
That's what they're building.
Inland to protect their seaport.
That's correct. Right. Yeah, it's good for business.
That's a major commitment, you know.
Yeah.
They're not going anywhere.
No. You know, and it's just like when America wanted to bomb them, the Russians said, well, it's going to be over our Navy.
Yeah.
Good luck with that. You want to start World War III? Go ahead. And so you've got the Russians having dug in, both with the largest trade pact in recent memory with the Iranians, and now digging in here with Syria, where the United States is a belligerent on the other side. And so, and Europe is in league with the United States as a belligerent on the other side. So you've got in the Magog War the potential of eliminating half of the world's population. Sunni Islam, plus the United States, Europe, and the allies in the West, as well as Russia. And then on the other side, you know, after a while, Shia Islam and the Chinese then become the impetus for Armageddon.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's exactly how that's how the newspapers read today. If you were to look at this battle from the perspective of the hindsight that Yahowah's prophetic testimony provides, but reading it, the maneuvers in the future, from the perspective of the Torah's overview and today's maneuverings. This is what we're going to witness.
Now, how much, though, of Indonesia and all that is Sunni?
Almost all.
So is that a conflict, or will they come just?
No, I think they join. Who knows? Yeah, well, who knows how it will play out? There's a very significant possibility that they just don't play. Mm-hmm. They don't need to play, for this all to manifest itself. It's you have the difference is that in Malaysia and Indonesia and Malaysia, you have very poorly weaponized Muslims. So they can fight one another, but they're not like the Iranians have a military that they could bludgeon Israel. Yeah. And the Russians absolutely have a military, and so do the Chinese, and so does Saudi Arabia, and Qatar, and those countries. So you're playing with it at a different level. Mm-hmm. I was reading an article this morning that appeared in the Los Angeles Times. Mm-hmm. It was about a raid that took place, I think, in somewhere between 2005 and 2007, just shy of 8 to 10 years ago. And it was in the Philippines. And there was a fundamentalist Muslim that was supplying bombs to the two dominant Islamic groups there in the Philippines. The Abu Sayyaf is one, and Islam Jamia is the other. And they are the two Islamic groups that Ramzi Youssef was part of. That Ramzi Youssef, the first bomber of the World Trade Center, the guy that helped Nichols create the bomb for the Oklahoma City Towers bombing. And the United States wanted to kill this bomb maker. And we had indicted him. We had not tried him. We had not convicted him, but we had indicted him because he was educated in the United States. America's taxpayers paid to train him to be an engineer so he could make bombs for Muslims. Yeah, better bombs for Muslims. And so we were working with the Philippines and we had some 600 or 700 American military in the Philippines to provide training and weapons and logistics to go off and find and kill this guy. So we finally had actionable intelligence. We were flying all of our little drone missions over the Philippines, and we got actionable intelligence. We found out where the guy was. We put the cameras on the U.S. troops, and the U.S. troops were to lead the Philippine police and military into a hit squad to kill this fellow. And as as they were approaching, most of the Philippines, two-thirds of them that were part of the group, got left behind. They couldn't swim across the streams and rivers, and they got tied up in the jungle. They lost two-thirds of the troops, but the Americans pushed ahead anyway. And as they approached the camp, one of the Filipinos tripped a landmine, and that alerted everybody in the camp, and there was a gunfight. In the gunfight, the Americans managed to kill the bomb maker, but there were thousands of jihadists that were now alerted because the raid was botched, and they surrounded the troops that had been brought into this raid. They were coordinated by the United States, and the United States' lack of intelligence on just how many supporters they had amongst the Muslims in these communities. And 70 people died, about a third of them being civilians, and of the remaining group, they were police and military for the Philippines. A totally botched raid. And never reported in the United States. But it fundamentally changed Philippine politics towards the United States. They sent the United States home. Said, we don't want you here anymore. And they precluded the United States using the Philippines Navy bases and air bases because Obama wanted to reposition. It was called the pivot, pivoting American armed forces against China. But it's just one more example of how we're just butchering everything we attempt to do.
It sounds a lot like the Little Bighorn, doesn't it? You go down there, there's no Indians down there.
Yeah, right. We'll just get that one guy.
We have a history of that. We just go in where no one knew to go.
Yeah, in fact, they were most of them were killed were in a cornfield, and the Islamists pulled out mortars and .50 caliber machine guns and just mowed them all down. And the United States was flying a helicopter overhead and evidently did nothing but watch.
I still have a hard time with I don't care what's over there. Why are you there?
Why are you there? It's so obvious that the mess that we have made with 11 to 12 million Muslims now currently poised to make their way in the United States and Europe, fundamentally infecting those countries with Islamic terrorism, that turning them even more anti-Semitic. That why would we perpetrate that on the world? That's what we've done.
Denmark seems to be the only country that says no at the border. I mean,
yeah.
They're stupid.
No.
Everybody else seems to have a collective stupidity that's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's just it's frightening, and yet the world is in lockstep about being suicidal is compassionate. Making yourself sick, importing the world's most deadly and destructive pathogen. Oh, that is enlightened. That's moral. That's compassionate. Is the world gone awry? And we are seeing in these maneuvers with today's newspaper exactly what Yahowah predicted would occur. Oh, my God. Yeah, here I'm looking at pictures, Kirk, and it's in Denmark. Denmark. We're talking about the roof of Europe. And here are tens of thousands of Muslims trying to run through Denmark to get to Sweden, who said, oh, yeah, we'll take them in.
That's a good place, Sweden.
Yeah. And, the Danish police, they're all wearing, the kind of mask that you would wear if you knew somebody was carrying a deadly germ, a contagious disease.
Mm-hmm.
They're all wearing those kind of masks, and they're all wearing gloves.
And that's something.
Yeah. As if they know. And the women, of course, they have left their Islam behind. No, they're wearing their black burqas and their headgear so that all you can see is their eyes. They're not leaving their Islam behind. No, they're bringing the deadly disease right with them.
Yeah.
Wow. And here they're going to the hat of Europe, through the head of Europe, the very top of Europe, and you think of how far they had to travel to get there, when in fact they just could have gone to Saudi Arabia. They could have gone to Kuwait.
Saudi's not going to let them go there.
Could have gone to Jordan. They could have. There's such enormous swaths of territory. All the money in the world, and yet here they come to Europe. Let's fix the problems of Islam. Oh, wow. I mean, the world's just literally just torn asunder at the moment. I mean, it's like this is the kind of event that I would have expected at the doorstep of the tribulation. I would have expected this to occur in 2025 because this is so catastrophic.
Mm-hmm. It's very disturbing. It's probably disturbed me more in the last 4 days than anything I can recall in the last few years.
Yeah. And of course, the Abominator just said, "Oh yeah, let's we'll take and we'll play our fair share. We'll take them in too."
Well, the Vatican's going to take in 2 families.
Oh, isn't that swell?
Uh-huh. That's what it said. Right down the hall, I'm sure, from his
yeah.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, that's just great.
Uh-huh.
Fundamentally changing the world as we know it. In fact, this article that I just clicked on from CNN during the break, it says a crisis of biblical proportions.
Interesting terminology.
Yeah, interesting terminology. And it is of predicted proportions in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms. Yahowah said this was going to occur. There'd be a tsunami of Muslims.
If you looked at this totally through atheistic eyes, you couldn't see anything, if you were a rational human being, on normal, everyday things. You could not see any way for the world to get out of this.
No, but you know, the socialist secularist, which is in charge of the world, media and the politics, academia, doesn't want to look deeply into this. First of all, they couldn't exercise good judgment regarding it if they did, because political correctness won't allow them to. But they know that the enemy, that those who are opposing this are typically right-wing Christians, conservative Christians. And that has been traditionally their foe in trying to reshape the West into a religious and political socialist secular humanist scenario. And so when they see that their foe is the most vocal opponent of these people, I think they view it favorably. And they don't think any more deeply about it than that. And they don't realize that the Quran orders Muslims to kill atheists, to kill agnostics.
Yeah,
as a matter of fact,
about a third of those.
The vast preponderance of Jews today, of racial Jews, are not religious. They're agnostics. Mm-hmm. It's the reason that this reconciliation that Yahowah speaks of taking place at the end of the tribulation at Yom Kippurim upon his return can happen is that an agnostic is reasonable, and when compelled to examine the evidence, to become observant again, and to turn to see what Yahowah has to say, they're open-minded. And so they're the ones that are going to be accepting it. But the vast preponderance of Islam's enemy, the Jews, are agnostics. They're not religious. They're pagans, in the sense of polytheists. No. Their view is no God.
Yeah. They just don't believe there could be a God based on whatever the same old arguments that are always going around. It can't be a God because he wouldn't let this happen.
Monday switch gears ever so slightly here. Monday at sunset is the beginning of Teruah. Right. And I did not know that we were going to find a Teruah affirmation in the passage that we have been considering in Yahowah that is condemning of Christianity. And yet we do. And this is the thing that I was able to cover yesterday, which is so interesting. And then let's talk a little bit about Teruah. Yahowah says, it is first and foremost, it was anyway, a channel for life. He's speaking of those that were once part of Yisrael, individuals who engaged in endure with God, that now became Ephraim, which is the religious and political institution, nationalized institution in opposition to God. It says that first and foremost, it was a channel for life, for enlightenment, for nourishment, for healing, similar to the firstborn from Bakar, from Bakurim. You know, similar to what happens on Bakurim, where we are born into Yahowah's family, adopted into his family. Then it says this, just before the summer fruit. Now, don't think of the summer fruit, by the way, as you're harvesting the fruit in the summer. Summer fruit you harvest in the fall. No, in the fall. That's why it's called the summer fruit. Summer fruit you harvest in the fall. So just before the summer fruit is harvested, that which has endured the summer, awakening at the time of the harvest, is payetz from kutz. And by the way, here it's Q. TS, and it's either QYTS or derived from QWTS. And of course, anytime you see the Q, you're seeing the approach of the light, aren't you?
Yes, rather than sun, so to speak.
Right. The other, you're seeing the right. Hope, enlightenment, empowerment, enrichment. That's what you're seeing with the Kof. You're on the cusp of embracing the light. All right, and then with the TS, of course, that's the signpost along the way.
Right, Paul.
Right, and so it's either with a Y, which is Yahowah's hand, or with the W, which is the tent peg that enlarges and secures the family home.
Right.
Okay, so just before the summer fruit is harvested, that which has endured the summer, awakening to the time of the reaping. Beneficially and relationally, he will look upon and find delight. He is in the main dude himself, creator of the universe. You've probably heard of him, Yahowah. Yeah. He will look upon and find delight in the one who is observant and who understands. Ra'ah. According to her repetitive and restoring witness in the palm of his hand. So the restoring ood, the restoring and enduring witness, Yahowah uses that term over and over again to speak of a particular set of instructions. Do you know the set of instructions that Yahowah repeatedly says is enduring and repeatedly says is restoring?
Well, I would assume, once again, it's the Torah.
That is correct. That is correct. And so he's saying here that the set-apart spirit continually provides witness to, enlightenment regarding this enduring and restoring testimony, which is found in the Torah. Okay?
No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so those who observe that, Yahowah says that he is going to not only pay attention to, but they're going to find themselves in the palm of his hand. But when? What was the first word here? Kutz.
Well, at the when will be at the end of the summer, which is the end of the age at this point.
Right.
33.
Right. Now, not only is Teruah a end of summer harvest, so he's speaking of Teruah here, but this whole context of this prophecy is spoken of as a time that Islamic terrorists are running amok. I mean, they talk about, that Ephraim is trampled down. Now, Ephraim ceased to exist at the time that this prophecy was given. They were already gone.
It's just like the Babylonian prophecies. I mean, that stuff didn't exist then.
Right. So for Ephraim to be, that northern kingdom be trampled down, you're talking about Muslims flooding into Israel in the Magog War. This is what he predicted in Yahowah 17 and 18. Now we're in 28. So he's he's telling us that this summer fruit harvest of firstborn children who are observant is timed just before this all-Islamic assault on Israel.
Okay, so we're at 2028, not 20.
No, we're 2026.
Oh, 2026.
Right, 2026. That's when he's telling you, because the all-Islamic assault on Israel begins in the tribulation, and therefore 2027, because the tribulation begins in the fall of 2026 with Israel sacrificing the West Bank and most of Jerusalem after having already sacrificed to Gaza. So it's narrowed at the waist in accordance with the prophecy found in Isaiah 17. Then we're told that Muslims flood into Israel. He uses the same tsunami reference that we read in today's newspapers. They flood into Israel. And they come within just the slightest measure of success in destroying Israel. But before that occurs, as a summer harvest before all of that, immediately before it, is when this Torah harvest, when Yahowah is going to come for those who are observant. Tells us 2026, doesn't it? So, Kirk, if you would provide some advice to someone who is currently estranged from Yahowah, doesn't know his name, doesn't pay any attention to what he's written in his Torah, and is religious, and you have just read this, that just before the summer fruit, beneficially and relationally, he will look upon and find the light in the one who is observant and understands the repetitive and restoring witness in the palm of his hand. What would your advice be?
Well, I would think you should be one of those that Shema the Torah.
Yeah, you got to be observant, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty simple.
Yeah, it's not a complicated answer.
Right.
I do want to.
So would you tell them to pray without ceasing?
Never.
No. Would you tell them to go into a church? And be safe?
Boys like to play. You've got to walk away.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Would you tell them to be tolerant?
No.
And accepting?
No, you cannot be tolerant of a snake in the grass.
No. So Yahowah made it really clear. He's going to find a light in. He is going to pay attention to those who pay attention to what he has had to share with us in his story, his restoring and enduring witness.
Now, in all fairness, when you say don't be tolerant, it doesn't mean that you have to beat somebody over the head. It doesn't mean to hurt them. It doesn't mean to. You don't even have to talk to them. You always say just walk away from them.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really want to get down to the brass tacks, but so it's not a harsh thing. He's trying to clear you away from the garbage.
Right. Yeah. For example, with this situation in Europe, all they had to do was shut the door and say, "No, you're not welcome here."
Sure. We can't accommodate.
Yeah. You know, and if if we hadn't gone and bombed Syria and Iraq and invaded both those countries, this refugee problem wouldn't exist in the first place. We have no one to blame but ourselves.
No.
But you don't solve the problem by making the problem worse. Don't shoot them, don't kill them. Just say no. You're not. No, you're not. You belong there. Go back there. Look what you've done there. We don't want what you've done there here.
Wouldn't it be the same if you go over there and capture all the Nazis and bring them to your country? I mean,
yeah, and let them go free.
And let them go free. And help them.
Right.
I mean, what kind of nutcase would agree with that?
Yeah, that would be like in World War II when we're fighting the Japanese in the Pacific. Rather than killing any Japanese, we would leave our troops on those beaches. We would accept the Japanese soldiers on our ships and then take our ships back to California and let them all go free.
Sure. Boy, that makes sense.
Well, that's what we're doing.
What generation is this that didn't get that point?
Yeah, well, fortunately, there is a way out of this mess.
Yeah.
And that's to be observant. If there was a single word that is germane to your salvation, it would be shamar. Be observant. Pay attention. Use your eyes to examine. Use your mind to consider what Yahowah has to say, and then respond.
Now, for the long-time listener, place, because He will leave us here as long as He needs us here as a voice. So now we're pretty much in agreement that it's 2020 in the fall of 2026.
Well, he's certainly in this context. Now, it is 1 year. Right now, we're in the midst of what he predicted was going to be the beginning of the tribulation. We're witnessing it all around us. So, is 1 year or two a factor in this? Probably not. But
it won't be as late as 2028, you know.
But it's certainly the way that this is worded in the midst of this. It certainly appears that this is being presented in conjunction with this onslaught of Israel and just before it. So that it certainly suggests 2026, doesn't it?
Well, it certainly is leaning that way. I mean, the worst case scenario, 2027. I can't see 2028.
No, it can't be. I don't think there's any possibility that it's going to be after 2026.
The battle just can't go past 2027. I would think that.
That's what I think. I think it started, it's actually started right now.
Yeah, 2 years ago. But
yes, absolutely. And it says, in that day, his day. So we're talking about his day, so it's not just that day. It's the pronoun his is associated with Yom. In that day, his day. So he has 7 days every year. So this is in his day. And by the way, he calls it a Shabbaton, Teruah. In the 7th month, on the first day of the month, there is a Shabbaton. A Shabbaton is a day for us to rest and reflect. This kutz, this summer fruit, the tiyeth at the end, isn't that depicted by a man laying down and resting and reflecting?
Right.
Another tie-in there as well. I think tomorrow we pick up here and we move to Teruah, because this is actually predictive of that day.
Great.